Good morning, venture capital. This is Metagame, and today we're following the money that quietly abandoned one of the biggest sectors in venture history. Pharma collapsed 62.5% last quarter. That's the headline. That's what the SEC data says. And if you stopped reading there, you'd restructure your healthcare allocation, call your LPs, maybe write a think piece about the death of traditional drug discovery. You'd be wrong. And the market would quietly thank you for clearing the field. Here's the real story. Total healthcare adjacent deal count, pharmaceuticals, biotechnology, other healthcare combined, was 74 deals in Q4, 74 deals in Q1, flat, not down, not collapsing, flat. Capital didn't abandon human health as an investment thesis. Capital changed its filing preference. And if your sector tracking runs on SEC category codes, you just watched 62.5% of your pharma signal disappear into a bucket labeled other technology. And you probably don't even know it yet. That's the tension we're sitting in. A map that stopped matching the territory. In a market that's moving faster than the cartographers. Let's build this from the ground up. Pharmaceuticals, 24 deals in Q4, 9 deals in Q1, a 62.5% single quarter collapse. 9 pharmaceutical deals against a backdrop of 1,003 total SEC Form D deals in Q1 means pharma represented less than 1% of all reported U.S. venture transactions. Less than 1%. In Q4, 24 deals put it at roughly 2.1%. Neither number reflects a sector punching at its economic weight, but the drop is still the kind of data point that triggers allocation reviews, board conversations, LP questions, and that's exactly the problem. Because the review gets triggered by a number that's describing a filing behavior, not a capital behavior. Biotech tells a softer version of the same story. 50 deals in Q4, 34 in Q1, a 32% decline, 16 transactions gone in a single quarter. Biotech always sold itself as the middle lane, faster than pharma, more defensible than software. That positioning is getting squeezed from both ends right now. On one side, AI-native platforms are compressing discovery timelines in ways that challenge the entire biotech value proposition. If a foundation model screens 10 million compounds in the time a biotech lab screens 10,000, you have to ask hard questions about what the moat actually is. On the other side, the companies that tried to bolt AI onto traditional wet lab workflows and called it transformation, they're in the failure numbers now. The MIT GenAI research put the AI pilot failure rate at 95%. S&P Global's abandonment rate for enterprise AI initiatives sits at 42%. Biotech's 32% deal decline is the sector-specific expression of those macro signals. Now here's where it gets interesting. And by interesting, I mean the kind of thing that should make every healthcare mandate fund manager set down their coffee and stare at the ceiling for a minute. Let me break this down directly. When an AI-native drug discovery company, think the Recursion model, the Insitro model, when that company files with the SEC, it faces a genuine classification question. Is it a pharmaceutical company? It produces drug candidates. Is it a technology company? Its enterprise value lives entirely in the computational platform, the foundation models, the generative chemistry stack. Founders, their counsel, compliance teams, they're not gaming the system when they file as other technology. They're accurately describing where the value is. The result is that every healthcare-labeled SEC bucket is systematically undercounting the most interesting part of the market. The deals that disappeared from pharmaceuticals and biotech didn't disappear. They migrated. And aggregate healthcare trackers don't follow them there. Recursion files as tech. Insitro files as tech. The SEC says pharma is down 62%. The SEC is describing a world that hasn't existed for 3 years. Back to the capital flows, because the macro context makes this even sharper. In Q1, $242 billion of $300 billion in global venture capital carried an AI designation. That's 80% of all global VC flowing toward AI-native business models. The gravitational pull of that category is reshaping how companies position themselves at formation, which shapes how they pitch, which shapes how they file. A drug discovery company anchoring its narrative in foundation model architecture, not clinical pipeline, not IND timeline. That company is a technology company by every metric that matters to a growth investor. It files accordingly, and your healthcare committee may never see the deal. That last part is not hypothetical, it's structural. If your investment committee routes healthcare deals through a healthcare committee, and the deal files as other technology, the routing logic fails before anyone reads the deck. The taxonomy gap becomes a sourcing gap. the sourcing gap becomes a portfolio gap. And in 3 years, when someone asks why you missed the AI drug discovery wave, it wasn't in the pharma deal count is not going to land as a satisfying answer. The enterprise-level data reinforces exactly where the split is happening. KPMG's Q1 data shows 65% of enterprises cite scaling difficulty as their primary AI barrier. 63% still require human validation for AI outputs. In drug discovery, human validation isn't a preference. It's a regulatory requirement. The FDA doesn't care about your model's confidence interval. It cares about clinical evidence, which means the ROI gap between AI investment and AI-generated drug candidates reaching IND is structurally wider in this vertical than almost anywhere else. The companies that figured out how to thread that needle, platform first, regulatory pathway second, filing as technology all the way, those are the ones capturing technology category capital. The companies that couldn't thread it are contributing to biotech's 32% deal decline. 2 cohorts, 1 sector. The SEC buckets don't show you which is which. So what do you actually do with this? 3 questions worth asking right now. First, does your healthcare allocation methodology track SEC sector codes, proprietary classification, or deal-by-deal diligence tagging? If the answer is SEC codes, your Q1 healthcare exposure number is likely understated on the AI native side and overstated on the traditional pipeline side. You may be holding a map with a 62.5% gap in it. Second, what percentage of your current biotech portfolio has AI as a core platform versus AI as a workflow tool? The failure rates and abandonment data cluster around the latter. The former is where deal activity is migrating and where it's being miscounted. This isn't an academic distinction. It's the difference between a company that survives the next 2 years and one that doesn't. Third, if you're running a dedicated healthcare fund with a mandate benchmarked against SEC sector data, your benchmark itself may be broken. Peer comparison against managers using different classification conventions becomes noise. You're not comparing apples to apples. You're comparing apples to a category that used to contain apples and now contains something else entirely. Here's the opportunity inside all of this, and it's real. The taxonomy gap is a first-mover advantage for any fund willing to reclassify manually. If you can identify AI-native drug discovery companies filing under other technology before they surface in healthcare sector screens, you're seeing deals that healthcare mandate funds are structurally prevented from finding. Not because those funds lack the capital or the conviction, because their own sourcing infrastructure routes the deal away before anyone with domain expertise touches it. That's not a market inefficiency born of complexity. That's a market inefficiency born of a form field. Which brings us back to where we started. Pharma didn't lose 62% of its deals. It lost 62% of its label. The capital is still there. 74 healthcare-adjacent deals in Q4, 74 in Q1. The capital didn't move. The taxonomy did. And the funds still navigating by the old taxonomy are making allocation decisions against a signal that's telling them a story about a market that no longer exists. So here's the question to sit with. If your healthcare allocation looks flat and your pharma deal count is down 62.5%, is your portfolio adapting to where the capital actually went? Or is your reporting system just hiding the rotation well enough that nobody's asked the question yet? Because the rotation is happening. The only variable is whether you're on the right side of it when someone finally does ask. That's our venture capital podcast for today. If you learned something new, tap 5 stars and follow our show. Thank you for listening to Metagame.
Grab news. Thomas.